The Houston Texans were demolished at the hands of the Jets. How did a 0-0 game get so out of hand? Welcome to the channel. I'm Cody Stoots. Let's talk some Texans. Let's get into the four big takeaways from this game. Brought to you by our friends at JBarM. Go check them out in East Downtown Edo here in Houston. 2201 Leland Street is where you can find them. The four big takeaways, we start at the end. CJ Stroud's injury is the biggest thing to pay attention to coming out of this game. Yes, the Texans lost. Yes, it significantly injures their playoff hopes. Yes, there's other injuries to pay attention to on this team, but CJ Stroud entering concussion protocol at the end of the game. DeMeco Ryans saying after the game that the quarterback is in concussion protocol. We'll see for this week. That is not good for this Texans team. Davis Mills will have to start if CJ Stroud can't clear concussion protocol ahead of the matchup with the Tennessee Titans next week. And the reason you're in some of these games, the reason you've been a team hovering around playoff contention is because CJ Stroud has played so well. I understand that against the Jets, it didn't look very good prior to the injury, but Stroud gives you a chance in every single game that you play, and the fact that he may be out against the Titans, and I know that's not a great Tennessee Titans team, but the fact that he may be out against the Titans significantly injures your chances to compete in the game, to win the game, and stick around in the AFC playoff hunt. Teams usually don't have their players clear in less than a week or about a week's time from concussion protocol. Now, CJ Stroud, he got the bell rung last week, and he was right back in the game, so maybe he is a little bit different, as the kids say, sometimes built different. Perhaps that's the situation, but if he can't go, it's going to be Davis Mills, and Davis Mills has limitations. And on top of Davis Mills' limitations, he might be working with no Nico Collins, with no Dalton Schultz. He's obviously not going to have Tank Dell. The offensive line's been playing poorly, and they can't run the football. Davis Mills is going to be in a tough spot if he has to play for CJ Stroud. Hell, if CJ Stroud gets to play, he's going to be in a tough spot with what the Texans are dealing with right now. That's the biggest thing. That'll be the number one thing to monitor over the course of this week is CJ Stroud going to be able to practice? And if he can practice and then clear concussion protocol, can he play against the Tennessee Titans next week? That's the biggest takeaway from this one. We got three more for you. It's the big four takeaways brought to you by JBarM. The second one is about the offense as a whole. Look, we'll talk about the defense here in just a second. They were bad in the second half. The offense was bad for all four quarters. This is an offense that lost Nico Collins on basically the first play of the game, and then never adjusted like Nico Collins wasn't in the game. Never adjusted like Tank Dell was lost last week to injury. This is a team that kept running the stuff that Nico Collins and Tank Dell did successfully, and John Mechie and Noah Brown and Xavier Hutchinson and Robert Woods can't run those same routes. And they didn't have Dalton Schultz either in this one, and injuries have not been an excuse for the Houston Texans this season. They haven't used it. I'm not going to use it in this moment because when you don't have Schultz and Collins and Dell, you got to adjust. You look and saw what the Jets did on offense, and yes, they had their two studs on offense, Breece Hall and Garrett Wilson. But even then, there was some easy stuff for their quarterback, Zach Wilson. Easy for him to get into a rhythm, make some easy throws, dump off plays to the talented Breece Hall. Like, the Jets made it easy for Zach Wilson. They're going against the Texans defense too as well. It's a little bit harder to do that against that Jets defense, but you've got to figure out a way to adjust and change as the game dictates the necessity to adjust and change. Bobby Slowick has been slow to do that in games. We saw one adjustment on one drive. They were able to score on that drive off of the fumble from the Jets, but ultimately they weren't able to get things going on offense, and it felt to me like they were continuing to run the stuff that Tank Dell, Nico Collins, and Dalton Schultz had run so successfully without Tank Dell, Nico Collins, and Dalton Schultz. That's a tough part. They've got to adjust and figure out how to move the football if those players aren't going to play. We know Tank Dell's not playing. Schultz is a question mark for next week. Nico Collins with the calf injury is a question mark for next week. They've got to figure out how to move the football. Certainly, if they're going to use Davis Mills at quarterback instead of CJ Stroud, there've got to be some easy things for the quarterback to accomplish and get into a rhythm. It didn't seem like that was the case with the Jets game. Big takeaway number 3, brought to you by our friends at JBarM. The offensive line, and even to an extent the defensive line, the trench warfare for the Texans, not good enough against the Jets. The offensive line was terrible. George Fant couldn't block anybody. Shaq Mason got beat up a couple of times. Michael Dieter had a rough assignment and was overmatched by Quinnen Williams. Juju Scruggs looked like a rookie. And Laramie Tunsil didn't stand out like a stud left tackle should on a week-in, week-out basis in this matchup. The offensive line, the blocking is not good enough. Devin Singletary absolutely blew a blocking assignment again from the running back spot. They let free rushers get in there. The first 2 third downs were courtesy of free rushers flying in and giving the Texans hell, and they had to punt on those first 2 third downs because of the free rusher, untouched almost on that first 2. The Texans couldn't block those guys. The offensive line not good, and the defensive line. I understand they got some QB hits. They ended up with 4 sacks, 3 of them coming when the game was pretty much already out of reach for the Texans offense. That's got to get going earlier and often. And this is a defensive line that if there's any sort of movement to the opposing quarterback, and there's more quarterbacks that can move than ever, if there's any sort of movement to the opposing quarterback, that guy gets away from some sacks. I mean, you saw Will Anderson chasing after him at one point. Zach Wilson, you saw Sheldon Rankins chasing after him, and then Wilson made some nice plays on the run. More and more QBs can do that. The Texans have to account for that. That 4-man rush the Texans put out there didn't get home near as much as the 4-man rush that the Jets put out there. It's got to have more success. Got to have way more success from that 4-man rush for this defense to operate the way that they want to operate. The fourth big takeaway from the loss to the Jets, the shellacking at the hands of the New York Jets, is DeMeco Ryans' defense did not adjust well enough in this game. I understand you lose players on defense as well. Zach Wilson cannot. Zach Wilson, one of the worst quarterbacks in all of football, cannot have a career half against you. Look, it's 0-0 at halftime. The Jets put 30 points on the board in a half. This is a team that could not score the football at all. And they put 30 points on the board. And really, I understand some of those come on short fields after the Texans are going for it on 4th down. Some of those are field goals late, yada, yada. But they just needed 14 points. They needed 2 touchdowns to take care of you. And Zach Wilson had a walk-in touchdown by Breece Hall, had a walk-in touchdown by Randall Cobb, and the Texans were not good enough on defense. I watched Robert Saleh's defense. They've got 2 good cornerbacks. You got Reed and Gardner, and they just stick them on wide receivers and let them be physical and nasty and mean, and they're out there knocking passes down, and they're right there. And then I see the Texans with Steven Nelson and Derek Stingley, and I see these big cushy cushions that they allow the wide receivers to work with. Look, there's 2 players on the Jets that could not beat you. It was Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall, and those 2 guys beat you. Garrett Wilson was getting open, moving the chains. They went to him a ton. Zach Wilson found him. A couple of those are really nice plays. Wilson with some contorting, weird throws, was able to make it happen. For the most part, Garrett Wilson taking care of business, and then stuff off of Garrett Wilson. You know, he goes out there and pops Christian Harris, and Harris can't get there to cover the running back after Garrett Wilson blocks him a little bit. That's not good enough, and I get Blake Cashman's your cover guy, but when Christian Harris is having trouble covering or Jake Hanson's having trouble, you got to try something else. You got to do something else different. DeMeco Ryans did not adjust well in this game. Those are 2 much maligned offensive minds over there in Zach Wilson and offensive coordinator for the Jets, Nathaniel Hackett, and they worked on the Texans all second half long. That can't happen. You're going to face far better offenses than what the Jets put out on the field down the stretch. And if the Jets can work you on offense, those offenses that you're scheduled to play, 2 against the Titans, 1 against the Browns, and 1 against the Indianapolis Colts, they will get to you as well. If the Jets can do that to you, there's some serious and real concern that other teams will be able to do that to you as well. Those are the 4 big takeaways from the loss to the Jets, the destruction at the hands of the Jets for the Texans. That was a rough one. 4 big takeaways brought to you by our friends at J Barham. You've seen the banners pop up here in the broadcast. Please check them out downtown. Some of the absolute best food you will ever have. The barbecue is fantastic. They have all sorts of specials. They have drink specials on the weekends. The beer garden is perfect for catching a game. Live entertainment on the weekends as well. J Barham, the official sponsor of the Big 4 takeaways after Texans games and a great supporter of the YouTube channel, just like you. You're a great supporter of the YouTube channel. Learn more about JBarM in the description down below. And on the way to the description down below, throw me a thumbs up on the video. Like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Hit the little bell so you never miss anything as well. If the big four takeaways weren't enough for you, did a whole live post-game show as well. Check that out here on the YouTube channel. Sure do love talking about these Texans, even on rough days. It's a little bit of verbal therapy for all of us. I guess you can do non-verbal therapy, but a little bit of therapy for all of us. Get it out, flush it, get ready for the Tennessee Titans next week. Plenty to get to here on the YouTube channel. We'll keep you updated on CJ Stroud on the channel as well. You don't want to miss out on any of that. So subscribe, like, pay attention, hit the bell so you never miss anything. Sure do like talking Texans, even on those tough days with you. And I can't wait till we talk Texans again soon.